The voice of sharing. Durian ASEAN.
Good morning. Welcome to Durian ASEAN again, the voice of discovery and sharing. We have our guest for Blast from the Grassroots today, William Anthonysamy. He will be sharing with us about the legislature or parliament in Malaysia. He's from my consti, and they have this bi-weekly explanation to the public on the Rakyat Guides, and today he's going to share with us more about the Rakyat Guides to Parliament. First of all, welcome to the studio, William.
Thank you, Arlene.
Yeah, and tell us more, what is Parliament?
Right, okay, so I'm going to bring you to the history where this one particular philosopher, right, by the name of Baron Montesquieu, when he was writing this journal, Spirit of Law, he mentioned that the power of the government need to be divided.
Mm-hmm.
So, at the beginning, the power of the government was concentrated. That's why how those days monarchies are very powerful. But later he decided that the power not supposed to be vested in one person or one entity, and the powers need to be divided. And thus comes the theory where the powers of government are divided into three, and thus comes the separation of power. Under separation of power, we can see that the powers are divided into three: the legislature, the judiciary, as well as executive. So today I'm going to be sharing you on the first component, which is the legislature, or known in Malaysia as parliament. So parliament comprises three components, right? Unlikely the other countries, there are only two components, but here in Malaysia, beware that we are having three components. They are the Yang di-Pertuan Agong, which is our king of Malaysia, and we have two houses known as Dewan Rakyat and also Dewan Negara, or is known as House of Representative or House of Senate, or commonly known as Lower House and Upper House.
Mm-hmm. And if I'm not mistaken, Parliament has a few functions, but of course the more obvious one, it makes laws and changes laws. But what are other areas that the Parliament have power over?
Right. A good point when you say that the laws are created and changed in the parliament. Now, when I share with my students, being a lecturer, I normally ask them that when law is created by man, there's room for two things. Law can be amended and law can be abolished. Unlikely like God's law. Now, God's law or rule of law that not supposed to be changed. That's why it's permanent, stable over the century, and will be permanent in years to come. So the first function of parliament is that law can be created, abolished, and amended. And there are other functions as well for the parliament. And this is where every month of October, we can see our Prime Minister will be spending 3 hours in Dewan Rakyat, and he will be tabling this very important.
3 hours is a very long one.
Correct. And he's going to present us the expenditure and the income for the country, which is known as the budget. So basically, Parliament will approve our national budget. So, for instance, last 2013, we have about 200 billion ringgit of revenue. So the PM will be explaining to us, or the Rakyat, where this money is going to be spent on. So that is function number 2. So to discuss about how the country's money is being spent. And also, the Parliament will oversee how the federal government is been running the country. So basically, the Parliament will look into the functions of the federal government. And lastly, any concerns that risen from the public. For instance, that because parliaments have two functions, all the MPs and senators, they have two functions, especially the MPs, they have two functions. One is to the parliament and to the people. So which means that when it's to the people, meaning that any concern raised by the people need to be brought forward to the parliament and will be shared and will be, and the parliament will try to find out a solution to the concern of the riot.
I see. So anyone can be a parliamentarian? I mean, in this case of Dewan Rakyat and also Dewan Negara?
Yes, anyone can. They need to fulfill few criteria. Now, for Dewan Rakyat, now, first criteria is very important. He or she must be a Malaysian, right? So he or she must be Malaysian. And for a Dewan Rakyat member, now the age limitation, you can become the youngest MP if you are at 21. So meaning that upon reaching 21 years old and above, you are already qualified to become an MP. All right. So, and obviously there are other rules also, whereby you're not supposed to be declared as a bankrupt, which means that if you are declared bankrupt once, so it's going to be very difficult for you to become, even though you have cleared your name, but it's still impossible for you to become an MP. So don't ever get bankrupt or declare as a bankrupt.
Then there's very high risk for businessmen or those who are doing business.
Yeah, correct. And also holds an office of a profit, meaning that when you are taken oath to become MP, you need to let go any form of office that generates revenue or profit. So you're not supposed to do that. And you're not supposed to spend more money, which is permitted during your campaign period. So if you spend more, so you will lose your candidature as well. And you're not supposed to be fined monetary in terms of 2,000 ringgit or be in jail for more than a year. So you will lose your candidature as well. And lastly, if you become a citizen of another country, which means that by automatically you're not a citizen of this country. So because you're started to show your loyalty to another country, so therefore you're not able to become a MP or senator in our country.
I see.
So that is for Dewan Rakyat. Now, as for Dewan Negara, now all others are same except for the age. Now, the age criteria to become a senator is 30 years and above.
I
So
see.
that is the, and also
So it seems like a house of elders,
yes,
30
correct,
years
because
and above.
we need about 10 years. If you look at the comparison from 21 to 30, which means that now what have you done in that 10 years? So if you look at who are our senators, senators are people who are distinguished, people who have contributed in towards the country in terms of glorifying countries, in terms of productivities.
And they do not necessarily need to be in a particular political
Correct. They are
party or political camp or even be part of politics.
Yeah,
right?
not necessarily. For instance, Jim Samsudin. Jim Samsudin is a person who have involved in theatre worlds. He have contributed in the world of theatre in terms of acting, producing, and also he's continuing in the world theatre. So therefore, in recognition of his efforts in the Malay theatre world, so therefore he was given this position. So basically, he's not a politician. So anyone can become a senator as long, right, you have done something for the country. For in terms of like glorifying the country's name, and for instance, if you are good at sports, so you have glorified our country.
So
in the
Lim
terms-
Chong Wei
Yes,
could
Lim
be.
Chong, Nicole, David, who knows, he might become our future senator as well.
Yeah. In the states of Sarawak and also Selangor, as we see, last year they increased the salary of the Menteri Besar, the Chief Minister, and as well as the cabinet within the State Assembly. I'm just wondering, what is the pay for the Member of Parliament and senators in the Federal Parliament?
Right. Okay. So these amounts are set out in Act called the Members of Parliament Remuneration Act 1980. So basically, these are the allowances that is awarded for MP and senators. For MP, now the range of salary is from 6,500, and for senators is 4,100 for the senators. Right, and it goes to the speakers of the Dewan Rakyat. Now, you'll be getting about 4,009 in addition to the MP salary, which means that you'll be getting another addition of 6,000. That goes to as well for deputy speaker, 10,000, and president of the Dewan Negara, about 14,000. Deputy president of the Dewan Negara, 10,000, and leader of opposition also are given the allowances, which is about RM 3,008, in addition to the MP's allowance, which means that you will get about addition of 6,000 as well.
But that's not much, right? I mean, if you really look at the market rate of salary, it seems like it's not just the salary of workers has been stagnant, the salary of politicians as well.
Right, okay, so unlikely like any other professions, right? So I call this a profession because this profession is very noble, because they came to this position because first, not because of money, because they want to do something for the country as well for the people. So in that sense, we can say that money is not a fundamental, but somehow because of their efforts, their time and energy that they've been sent, so these are the I believe that this is already justified according to the market
So, talking about member of parliaments and also senator, when they are being elected, being to do their obligation as a member of parliament, also senator, what is the process for them to be part of what is the process for them to be recognized and also sit into the parliament?
Right. Okay. So, for the MPs, member of parliament, so
Should they
obviously,
take an oath or something?
yes, for the MPs. So first of all, they need to win the election because that's one of the important criteria before they can allow to sit in the parliament. And secondly, they need to take an oath of office, which means that they need to swear in, saying that they are going to do their best of their ability, that they will bear true faith and allegiance of Malaysia, and preserve, protect, and defend of the Constitution. So, meaning that they need to uphold the Rukun Negara number 3, which is uphold the Constitution.
So, in a parliament sitting, what would happen in it? Like, will there be any meeting between the Dewan Rakyat and Dewan Negara? Because to pass a bill is quite intricate, right? The process.
Right. Now, after the announcement of election date, so meaning that EC will inform the election date, from the date of election date, now the parliament need to meet at least once. Right. So after the announcement of election date, they need to meet at least once, and they need to have the first meeting. First sitting means that in parliament, all the MPs are required to assemble and officiated by Yang di-Pertuan Agong, and as well goes to the Dewan Negara, where all the senators need to meet at least once, and also officiated by the Yang di-Pertuan Agong. Now, parliament must have his first sitting within 120 days from the date of the last general election. You might be wondering what's going to happen. Do you know what's going to happen if they overshoot by 121 days?
No idea, what is it?
Right, so here is a clear case what's happened back in Perak in 2008 crisis. So this is about State Legislative Assembly. We know that the history that first government was formed by the opposition, later because of the three members from the opposition resigned and then become independent and later decided to join Barisan Nasional. So over the night there's a transition of the government from opposition to ruling. So now obviously opposition is not going to be very happy with that. So there's a lot of struggle was going on. In this struggle they forgot to meet. So it went until 119 days. So that's where I get to know that what's going to happen if they do not meet in 120 days. Now, if they still unable to meet and the king does the official parliament or the sultan do not officiate state legislative assembly, so on 121 days the EC can announce a fresh election. So for parliament there will be another fresh new election, or the state they're going to have another.
But it didn't happen, isn't it?
It never happened. In our city, it never happened. Right. So they went on the meeting, and 120 days, the region of Perak, Tengku Nazrin, came in and officiated the state assembly, and officially now in Perak, the ruling government is in the form of Barisan Nasional.
But interesting to know, like in the parliament, if anyone who changed their affiliation from different camps into another one, can the government be changed overnight just like that? Is it something that happened in other countries as well?
Yeah, correct. That's where we can see a lot of concerns been shared over the years, that we have a lot of previous MPs of previous Adun who have simply resigned because to pay way for someone because of some political interest. Now, if you see the ethical part of an MP, for instance, now, MP are barred from resigning. They are not supposed to resign because when you swear in as an MP, you're supposed to serve an MP for 5 years. Now, if you resign for some reason, at current law, the only punishment is that this MP cannot be contested in the next 5 years. Right? So therefore, and nowadays we can see that a lot of quarters are asking that more rigid form of punishment rather than barring from 5 years, because this is very unethical, because people are vote for who you are or which political that you represent. and later he decided to resign. So basically, it's very unethical.
But there are people also who vote for the individuals themselves, regardless the individual is in any camps. So in that case, is it still considered as something, sort of like against the will of the people? If the member of parliament decided that, oh, I want to be in this camp instead of that camp.
Right. Okay. So now, since there's no rigid law, so which means that yes, there's room for resignation, which means that MPs can allow to resign. But when you look into all the efforts, energies, and also the time that people have contributed in the process of election, and
but it is still possible, right?
Yes, it's possible.
So if I remember at this one point in the past, Anwar said that he would bring in a few member of parliament to jump ship from the Barisan Nasional to Pakatan Rakyat. Although it didn't happen, but if it happened, it is actually something that is acceptable, is it?
Yes. Yeah, it can be done. But as I said, the ethical part, right? Because I still remember our late Mr. Kalpal Singh, right? During his lifetime, he always said that it's right time for the country to introduce this one law, anti-hopping. Anti-hopping, which means that you're not supposed to hop from one party to another. Unfortunately, that law is still in discuss. But when the law has been established, then you can see that we do not encourage this kind of forms of resigning. So, as I said, it's the credibility of the MP, because people vote and people trust that you're going to change, you're going to bring a lot of changes over the 5 years. So you are shaken when, because of your own pursuits, because of what you're thinking is right at that time, and ignoring the interests of the people. So basically, this MP becomes selfish, right? So when you become selfish and not pursuing the interests of the people, so likewise, as a normal human, say that is very, very wrong thing to do.
So let's go to the proceeding in the Dewan Rakyat and Dewan Negara. How is it being conducted?
Right. The MPs in Dewan Rakyat choose a speaker, the Yang di-Pertuan Dewan Rakyat, and we have 2 deputy speakers because the house is big. So that's why we have 2 deputy speakers. Unlikely for Dewan Negara, there's 1 Yang di-Pertua and 1 deputy and only. Now, the criteria of choosing the speaker in Dewan Rakyat, there are 2. So they can choose anyone in the house, which means that among the 222, they can choose one of the MP to become Dewan Rakyat. To become the speaker, or they can choose someone else, which means that they can choose someone outside from the house, and this person need to stand or to be qualified to stand for election to be an MP. So therefore, he or she can become the speaker. Now, for senator, the Yang di-Pertua Dewan Negara must be a member of the Senate, which means that out of 70 members, one of them will be chosen as the Yang di-Pertua Dewan Negara. So each house has its own rules and how to conduct the process in the house. So these rules are known as standing orders. So each house have their own individual standing orders.
So how is the law being made by Parliament? You show me a very intricate sort of like procedures, starting from the House of Representatives to the Senate and to the Royal ASEAN, and lastly it will be made into a law. But maybe you can explain even more detail about how the process.
Now there are a few terms that you need to memorize with, right? So the law begins with a bill, right? Known as a proposed or a draft bill. So a bill could come from a minister or MP, or a senator. That is called as sponsoring bill. So that is the first term, which means that that's the birth of a bill. So someone wanted to initiate this bill, so it can come from an MP or a senator or a minister. The bill then needs to be introduced to the Parliament. So this is called as a tabling of the bill. So which means that now it will be tabled at the Parliament, and the Parliament will go few rounds of procedure. So the first thing is that they can be introduced either in Dewan Negara or Dewan Rakyat. So let's choose Dewan Rakyat. So say that this bill is introduced in Dewan Rakyat. Now, in Dewan Rakyat, it goes in the first reading, bacaan pertama. So which means that now in this process, they are not allowed to debate. There's no room for questioning because it's normally one-way communication. Now, if you notice, this is where the bill is going to be proposed and introduced. Now, in practice, there's no actual reading of the bill. So, meaning that the bill is assumed that everyone has already read the bill.
But in other countries, do they have to literally read the bill?
Yes, they have to really read the bill. So, which means that they need to, even though it's been approved at cabinet, for instance, the minister who's also an MP need to read back the bill and then introduce the bill. Right? So that will happen. Now, in second reading, the Dewan Rakyat discuss and debate the bill. So here's where a lot of them will be gearing up, asking the questions like whether this bill is necessary. Say that, for instance, we want to build a project Lebuai Utara Selatan, so our national highway. So it costs millions and millions. So people are going to ask, why are you going to spend this money, right? Rather than it can be used for other purposes. So this will be done in the second reading. Now, I still remember what did YB Sam Yusuf, who's a Minister of Kerja at that time, he said that one of the reason why he proposed Project Lebuai Utara Selatan is that if you can see that some point of the highway is look a runway. So in case of emergency, small airplane can land in this runway. So these are the reason how a MP would justify in round 2 when people are questioning whether the bill is necessary or not. So that is round 2. Now in third reading, Bacaan Ketiga, the minister or MP proposed the bill to submit to bill a vote. So which means that they're going to get vote of approval. So they need to have a quorum, meaning that if more than half of the MPs who are present and the voting, or we can choose to have this proportion, which is 2/3 of the total number of MPs, in certain case, approve the bill, and then thus the bill is passed. So first level of pass is done at Dewan Rakyat, for instance. Now the bill is then sent to Dewan Negara, where 3 readings also take place. So the entire process will be repeated back in Dewan Negara. If the bill is passed at Dewan Negara, so now it will be presented for the last person that's going to give the approval, and that's where we're going to see the role of our Yang di-Pertuan Agong. So Yang di-Pertuan Agong is going to give the royal assent. Now, if he doesn't want to approve for some reason, so the bill can be delayed for 30 days. Now, since the bill is already approved in Dewan Rakyat, so the bill automatically becomes an act after 30 days. Now, not all bills can be amended or can be abolished. Now, some bills need additional bodies or consents before they become law. Now, for example, the consent of conference rulers is needed for any amendment of Article 152, which is a national language, and any article that is concerned about Article 153, special position of the Malays and natives of Sabah Sarawak, need the consent of the conference rulers, and also consent of Yang di-Pertuan Negeri for Sabah and Sarawak is needed for any constitutional amendment of affecting Sabah and Sarawak.
What about the vote for no confidence against the Prime Minister?
Right.
Would that need additional consent from other agency as well?
That be can done in the Parliament itself. If someone table the motion and the Parliament approve the motion, so therefore, if they manage to get 2/3, so that's where the difficult part become a PM. It's not easy to become PM because the PM also need to make sure that during his tenure as a PM, he need to make sure that 2/3 of the members always support him as a PM. Now, when he lose that number, so therefore, members of Parliament can vote for non-confidence. So when a non-confident vote is being cast and is been approved in the Parliament, so therefore the PM need to resign. If the PM reluctant say that no, I don't want to resign, so therefore there's one person who will step in, which is the Yang di-Pertuan Agong will step in and force the PM to step down by appointing another PM. So there's a discretion of the Yang di-Pertuan Agong.
I remember during the 13 May incident that what I read is the Prime Minister, with the advice of the Prime Minister, the King actually suspended the Parliament, and I think it was probably the only time where the Parliament was suspended. Is it allowed, or is it allowed only in special situation like during the May 13?
Yes, Parliament can be suspended under 2 conditions. One, in every 5 years when we have a general election.
Mhm.
So Parliament need to be suspended. So Parliament will be suspended on the advice of PM. When the PM advise and brought forward to the King, and the King give the royal assent, so therefore the Parliament will dissolve.
Mhm.
So that only paves way for our generation. Now, the next condition will be that when this particular law is being enacted, which is Ordinance of Emergency in Malay, in 1948, in Malay is known as Darurat.
Mhm.
So when Darurat diistiarkan, which means that when this law has been enacted, so it gives powers to the King to dissolve the Parliament. So therefore, Parliament will be suspended, and a temporary government will be elected to become a caretaker until the suspension has been lifted.
Mhm. So it was actually suspended quite a number of times during the emergency as
Yes,
well as
correct.
during the communist era as
Yes,
well.
correct.
Regarding on the member of parliaments during debates, I mean I have to raise this because the content that were being debated or the expression that they use to debate those motions, sometimes they use vulgar words, and sometimes it can be racist, sexist, and it can sort of like really just a circus of people, using vulgar words instead of really trying to debate the motion. Is this something that is allowed or a privilege under the parliament?
Right. Talking about privileges of the Parliament,
Mhm.
yes, all the MPs and senators are given a special privileges, which means that anything said and done in the Parliament cannot be used against them or brought forward to the court proceeding. So they are well protected under this, because during these proceedings in the Parliament, they need to be openness. So we cannot barricade them, we cannot stop them from any form of limitation. But however, they are reminded that not every single questions can be posted. For instance, they cannot touch on Article 152, 153, special position of the Malays. They cannot question about the monarchy system, and they cannot talk about anything that is going to affect the Sarawak, and so forth. So all these are still a sensitive matter to be discussed. So they are prevent. So here is where we're going to see the role of the speaker. Now the speaker controls the audience by allowing, disallowing question that has been posed. If the questions are somehow is unfit to be discussed further, so therefore the speaker can ask the MP to rephrase or drop the entire argument. So that can be done. If this furthered, the speaker can impose some form of punishment. So therefore either MP can be suspended or MP can lose his remuneration as well. Now, however, being a Malaysia, we need to uphold uphold our national ideology, which talks about our behavior, kesopanan, kesusilan. So even though you are elected people, right, an MP or senator who is selected by the King, so you are reminded that at all the time you're supposed to uphold these values, which is also part of our national ideology. So which means that they are not supposed to mention things that is going to offend many people. So ethics part is very important. The morality part is very important. So they need to reflect as a leader. They need to set an example, right? To especially to our younger generation, right? So again, this is much highlighted that there are better things to discuss. There are important things to discuss. There need to discuss about the future of our country, because the mandate was given to them. So they need to do a lot of changes for the riot for over the 5
Talking
years.
about the topics of discussion that parliamentarians should discuss, what kind of issues that they should be discussed actually? Because what about people say, should they take care of the roads and the drains in my area or the potholes?
Right. Okay. So they need to know what are the lists mentioned. So we have two lists, which is federal list and also state list. If you're talking about drainage, it falls on the state list. So which means that it belongs to the jurisdictions of the states. So now, however, they still can raise this concern to the YB that they elected in their constituency, so they still can bring forward concerning of any matters of the people in the parliament if the problem is persist or not solved. So which means that they still can visit. Remember, the duty of MP is dual, which is to the people as well to the parliament in terms of making law. So now, he also have to make sure that all these problems are solved in his constituency.
So the next question is like I still remember in RTM, if I'm not mistaken, I don't know whether they are still doing it live. Show on the parliament session. In the past they did, but they only do it for the first 30 minutes or something like that, and it was already quite an embarrassment in terms of what was being discussed. But what if people want to know more what actually happened during the parliament proceeding, where they can get all this information?
Right, okay, so they can always watch live in RTM. If they miss, so they can always allow to go watch it live, which means that they need to request to watch the proceeding. There's a secretary that's handling of these permissions and part and all that. And also they can go and log into this particular website that will be updated very frequently, and it's official website for the parliament as well, www.parliament.gov.my, for details of all the proceeding that is being done in the parliament in terms of all this drafted bill, which are the bills has been ongoing and which are the bills going to be proposed and which bill is being approved, and all that can be will be uploaded, because all this needed to be gazetted and notified to the public. So
and it's also available in major public libraries in this country
correct.
as well.
Yes.
So for normal people like us, right? I mean, seldom we go to the parliament to really understand how it works. But why Malaysians should really understand the parliament proceeding, and also about the importance of electing good member of parliaments and all that.
Right. So now that's where I always advise or mention about a few things to my students. Now, one of it is that your voting rights, right? So now your voting rights is very important because it's an exclusive rights for every citizen. So meaning that you must able to exercise rights when you fulfill the criteria of become a voter. Now, why voting is very important? Because single vote determines the fate of this country for the next 5 years. A single vote of yours will determine the fate of this country for the next 5 years. So which means that if you're able to identify who's capable of doing that, so that is very important.
And these member of parliaments will be the one debating core economic and political issues of this country. For example, the GST bill and the Public Assembly bill,
Right.
and a host of and a number of it, and including foreign policy bill like the TPPA, if they want to.
Yes, all these bills are in return when you say that it should be beneficial to the people. So which means that it's not supposed to be beneficial of certain people, but it must be beneficial of every single individual, directly or indirectly. So this bill need to be discussed thoroughly. And that's why we have so much around of discussion and all that. So when it reaches us, it must be beneficial at every level or every corners of the people in this country.
And in fact, electing the member of parliament with sound mind is even more important. I mean, you compare it to the Singapore parliament.
Yeah, correct. That's why I'm always ask my students. So say that you are going to first cast your first vote. So you need to do a little bit of homework. For instance, that the manifestos, the janji of all these leaders, they will say that they're going to promise 10 things in their kawasan. Right. Keep that manifesto. And then the following 5 years, right, when this person still want to become a leader, so ask him to sit down with you and buy him a coffee, and then show him back the piece of paper. Say that, do you remember this piece of paper? This is your last 5 years manifestos. If he have delivered out of 5 or 6 of his manifests, so which means that this person is a person who promise and deliver. And we can see also people who promise but don't deliver. So now it's in the hand of the voters, whether you want to continue to vote for this person or not. So as I said, we can't choose to be ignorant. We need to have some form of education, some form of responsibilities in choosing our leaders, because these are the leaders that we entrusted. So, and our faith depends on this leader. So it will come back to us in the form of what they are going to do in the next 5 years.
So you would advise for people to actually vote for the personality or the person itself rather than the political party or political ideology the person is with?
Yes, correct. Normally, in our practice, people vote for 2 reasons. One, who is that person as an individual, and who is this person is standing for, which political party. right? So that is a major criteria. But I will feel that whether this person is able to do many things or not, saying thing is one and delivering is another thing. So we want someone who can deliver, not by just saying.
And also can debate and bring forth,
Yep.
like really good motions
Yes,
in the
correct.
parliament proceedings.
Yes, a lot of inputs. So we wanted to have a lot of inputs. So that's where when you see the first round reading, in practice, no one should need to be introduced, which means the MP not necessarily introduced, but they're supposed to go back home and read up. If you can see in the RTF, for instance, when you do live telecast, in every MP's table, there's a bundle of proposal. So they need to bring back this bundle and they need to read line by line until they have a gist of that bill. And then they must be ready to ask questions when they come to round 2. So they need to contribute in terms of constructive criticism, and for instance that this bill can be improvised in many ways. So that kind of input is what is really required from our MPs.
So very fruitful understanding about the parliament or the legislation in Malaysia. Thank you very much, William.
Thank you, Arlene, for the opportunity given.